Hey guys, it's Ollie from Rad Season. Welcome to another episode of the Rad Season Show. I'm super stoked to be joined today by the co-founder of HKT Products and the HKT Podcast, Davi Birks. Davi, how are you, man?
What's up, dude? Great to be on here. Appreciate it. Following some big guests. I'm not too sure what I'm doing here, to be honest. Got a bit of imposter syndrome again.
Dude, thanks for coming on. How are you? How's everything been?
Dude, doing great, doing good. Yeah, I mean, same as everyone, I think, in a weird kind of way. Still a little bit all over the place due to this global pandemic and, having to totally change the way I work. But like we were talking just before the podcast started, dude, like, it's bittersweet, isn't it? Especially with the industry I work in, with the bike industry, it is pretty buoyant at the moment. It's pretty healthy. The podcast is going really well, but it's just this huge swap from living life out of a van on the road to now living in this four walls sort of thing. It's weird. I don't know quite how I feel about it just yet, to be honest with you.
Has it been pretty strange, man? Because you were on the road. You must have been on the road the whole time, right?
Dude, it's so different. And I went back out last week to visit a couple of customers down south, and it was a massive reality check of how much things have changed. So I guess, obviously we can get into it a bit more, but like my previous role of what I do for a living was I was on the road. Like I was a sales rep, sales agent, and I'd be on the road 4 or 5 days a week, visit 4 or 5 shops, bike shops, skates, snow, surf shops or whatever. And, stay in awful hotels every night, eat bad food, but do get to go riding with your friends and do some fun stuff on the side, right? So you've got that whole lifestyle of just traveling and not really knowing where you are and not really ever having any routine, to now I'm like so militant with my routine. It's a bit creepy. It really annoys my girlfriend because I'm so like every day is kind of the same, but it's the only way I've found to be able to work from home. So just to backtrack, I guess, like if you'd said to me, God, how long we've been doing this now? So a year and a half ago, right? You're going to have to work from home for a year. I'd have gone, nah, no way. Can't do it. I get anxiety as soon as I sit in here. I've got like maybe an hour in me and then I'm like, I get distracted and I float off and do something else.
Yeah.
So I've had to really like almost be militant and teach myself a routine every day, which does involve a few breaks, and it involves, going out for a run or going for a bike ride or doing whatever, but it's the only way I can get through. It is literally the only way I can do it, because if not, I'm just all over the place. I'm just a mess. I'm watching YouTube videos, nothing actually ever gets done. I just sit here, and then at the end of the day, I'm scratching my head like, what have I even done today? So yeah, super militant with it, man. So the days are different at the moment, but ultimately it's working out pretty good. Business is good. And I think all of our retail partners that, throughout all the brands that I sort of work with and stuff, have adapted really well as well, to be honest. It's just a new way of doing things. Is it going to go back to normal or whatever normal was? I don't know, man, but I think it will. But I think my role and people who do something similar to me, whether a sales rep or they work for someone or a sales agent, it's going to have a lasting impact on it for sure. I don't think I see myself ever being that guy that's on the road 5 days a week again, or 4 days a week. It might be 1 or 2. Everything else can be done virtually. Yeah. So yeah, big shift, really big shift. When you really think about it, it's kind of nuts. Yeah, that I'm here all the time at the moment. So,
man, I'd love to take it back, I guess, to how you got into the industry and like where it all started, because you were a bit of a keen. You were into motocross, weren't you? Was that sort of how that all started off with your family?
Yeah, so I'm from, like a motorsport / 2-wheel sort of family. Growing up, I had an uncle who raced motocross. I had another uncle who raced speedway. My dad's always been into sort of cars and that sort of stuff. So going all the way back, man, like I've always been around it. It's not, it's not unnatural to be around a bike every day of your life, and it wasn't when I was a kid either. There was always stuff floating around, bikes and cars and stuff like that. So yeah, from an early age, I've always been a 2-wheel enthusiast. Not really into cars at all. I've never really got that. I've never really owned a fast car or had any in like any sort of interest in it. But yeah, always been around two wheels, always had bikes, whether that was BMX as a kid or, you know, mountain bikes and stuff like that. And then as I sort of got a little bit older, I got really into motocross. And it was kind of the hardest sport to get into when you're young, and I'm not from a wealthy family or anything like that, so it was always real hard. Like, you know, we did struggle, I guess, getting bikes and going to races and all that sort of stuff when I was young. And especially when you start getting to a certain level, you know, things start costing a lot of money. You know, it's simple as that. You know, if you're going to go racing motocross for anyone, you need a bike, simple as, right? Which at the moment is going to cost you £6,000, £7,000. And then you need a van, and then you need all the kit. Oh, and then you need some knee braces because you're going to blow your knees out. And then you're going to go racing, and you're going to need fuel, and it just like escalates. So, yeah, growing up, it wasn't easy. You know, like I said, we're not from a rich family, but we got through. We got it done. And I think I've always just been a massive fan of two-wheel sport more than anything, more than being good at anything as well. I've always just been a fan. I was like a pretty creepy kid in a weird kind of way. Like I used to study like Dirt Bike Rider magazine and MBUK, and I used to, you know, watch videos every night and DVDs, I guess, as I got a little bit older.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was always looking for a way to stay in the industry or get into the industry, knowing that you weren't probably going to make it as a professional rider. You know, there was that push there, especially with the moto stuff. There was always a push like to try and turn pro. But realistically, like I knew, my family knew, they don't have the money to do it, and I probably didn't have the talent to do it either. But yeah, I became sort of dedicated to the industry more than anything. So then that transitioned into going to the States for a while. I think if anyone wants to make it as a professional motocross rider, they have to go to America. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And I always loved anything American motocross. American
Where did
food.
you go for that?
Pardon?
Where did you go with
Where in California? So every the motocross industry is like revolves around California, around Temecula area, Riverside, Temecula, Lake Elsinore, that sort of area. And there was a holiday company called MX Heaven going back many years. And they used to take people from the UK, and you could go over there and you rented a bike off them and you stayed in the house, and then they took you to the tracks and stuff. So I ended up going there just for a holiday once, and then came home, absolutely loved it. I had the best holiday ever. Went with a load of other sort of motocross guys from the motocross club that I rode in, and then basically somehow managed to negotiate a way of going and living out there. So left school at 16, no GCSEs, just peaced out. I was like, see ya, I'm going to go ride my bike. And obviously the plan was never really to turn pro or anything. It was just to go out there and ride and sort of make a living working at this sort of holiday destination. And dude, it was the best time ever. It was so fun, you know, really young though, like super young.
Were you 16 when you went there then, when you did?
Yeah, 16, 17. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's young. It was really young, but also just so good for like character building. And, you know, going back then, there was no internet really. I mean, there was internet, but it was pretty crap. So yeah, just pieced out at 16, and I was like, right, I'm going there. And I sort of lived and worked there off and on for sort of 4 years, I think, in total.
Okay.
Yeah, 3.5, 4 years. You know, you come back, refresh the visa, go back again. And
was there a few of you that did that, or did you just sort of?
No, I went on my own. Yeah, I went on my own. I don't know.
16, just going, yeah.
I know. And God, it's so crazy, man, thinking back, because I literally had nothing, you know, no GCSEs. I was just like, I guess I wasn't an academic kid though. You know, school never really interested me, to be honest. I wasn't bad at school. You know, I just did what you had to do to sort of get by. Yeah. But I knew I wasn't going to go to college. There was nothing there for me. You know, the university wasn't even an option. I don't think it ever has been. It never will be either. I don't think. I just was never interested. You know, I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, which was ride dirt bikes and just do that. Which, you know, and then I think it was a case of just trying to figure out how you can do that and make a living without actually being very good at it, if that makes sense. So yeah, that was the move, man. Moved out to the States and met so many amazing people I'm still in touch with today. Massive, almost like that was my university of life, right? Going out there at such a young age, having to find your way. I remember coming home and doing my driver's license, then moving back out there. There was a point where I'd never really driven a car in England, but I could drive perfectly fine on the wrong side of the road with a left-hand drive car. And just honestly, man, even thinking about it now, it's so crazy to think that, I went and did that at such a young age. But yeah, it shaped me, man, big time shaped me. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
Why did you decide to come back? What was the...
It's mainly visa issues.
Okay.
To be honest, yeah, there was the place I was working at, this MX Heaven place. There was some fallouts there between one of the guys who owned it and one of the guys that was basically running it. There was a fallout. Even at, let's say when I was 19, there was a lot of pressure on me. I was almost running the entire thing. Like, dude, we'd have a group of 20 people come in from, let's say, the UK, and I'd go and pick them up from the airport. So I'd drive all the way to LAX from sort of Temecula. Bring them home to the house. I'd get them settled. I'd, make sure they're in the right beds, make sure they're in the right rooms. I'd then be working on 20 bikes, making sure the bikes were sorted, ready to go. I'd then, load everything up, take them to the track the next day. And it was a lot of pressure, man, for a young person at, 19 or something. And I guess there was people there that were, 30 years old, 40 years old, thinking, what the hell's going on here? Is this young guy just basically running this business on his own? And I was just over it. Honestly, it run me into the ground physically. Yeah. I was working just crazy hours. And again, there was this fallout, and the guy who actually ended up leaving that company was the guy that I got on with the best. And I was like, well, now I'm just here on my own in America. I don't really know that many people, really, because I guess the reason I didn't really know that many people is kind of weird / interesting too, because it was like a holiday destination. People were just coming in and out all the time. So you never really built, right? Yeah, you never built up any relationships with anyone. And there was people living there that were professional riders too. And we had a no girl policy even. So I never really, I had a girlfriend when I was out there, I'll be honest with you, but there was no opportunity of, meeting anyone else. It was, there was no partying, there was nothing like that. It was living like a professional athlete, but not being a professional athlete and just basically doing all the bad stuff that comes with it, which is being quite isolated, just training, working, riding, and not really earning any money from it either, which was a bit of a kick in the balls, especially when I came home and I was like, I literally have nothing. Moved home with, 30 quid, I think, in my bank account, but wouldn't change for the world. Like I say, it shapes you, doesn't it? That sort of stuff. When you look back, it's a big thing to go and do. And it set me up pretty well, I think, for life, to be honest,
And so, what did you do then when you got back?
What did I do when I got back? So that was actually when I got my first industry job. So there was previously, some people listening might remember it. There was a motocross brand called One Industries, which was a Californian company. And the distributor was based in the UK. They were down south. And I was like, right, I just want to work in the industry. I don't know anything else. I don't know about anything else. I just need to get myself an industry job. And I love the idea of being a rep and representing brands and being part of, marketing campaigns. Even back then, dude, before social media and before all that sort of stuff, I was really interested. I used to, honestly, it was so creepy. I used to study magazines and try and figure out photos and, what sort of brand message they were trying to tell. And I was kind of creepy. But anyway, so I just called up one day. I called this distribution company that were based down south, and I said, have you got a northern sales rep? And they were like, well, no. And I'm like, well, do you want one? And they were like, we never really thought about it. I mean, maybe. And I just said, well, I'll drive down and meet you tomorrow. And that's what happened. I drove down from Sheffield down to Devon, which is a good 5 or 6 hours drive.
Yeah.
And I got a job. Walked in there, told them who I was, what I did. No experience of being a sales rep. Nothing at all. Just got a job. Nice. But it was the best job. Honestly, it was the best job because they weren't really interested in the sales side of it. It was more customer sort of, what would you call it? Customer support almost. So my job was to go around and have coffee and tea and tell people about One Industries, and yeah, you'd sell them stuff, but I wasn't commission based or anything like that. It was the perfect job, got myself a brand new vehicle through it, which again, I was only young, as 19, 20. And yeah, I just got this amazing job. And again, it's one of those things, man, they say, don't they, your network is your net worth. And I still to this day deal with customers that I met when I was at One Industries and I was 19 years old, 20 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 34 now, so that's 14 years ago, which is quite a long time. But yeah, I just got out there, met some people, and just I was there for, God, this is honestly, I'm so bad with what I've done and the time scales. I was there for about 3 and a bit years, I think.
Cool.
But there was a bit of crossover before starting my business. Like I was there, but I wasn't there, sort of thing. I was like just in it for the wage at the end of the month for a little while, to be honest with you. But then,
and then when you started your business, what was the was that something that you were thinking about? What, like, whilst you were doing the repping, you're like, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, what happened basically was, I said before that I had this job which wasn't really commission based or anything. Then the company went through a bit of an ownership change, and it got took over by a company called the 777 Group, and they owned a bunch of brands, from sportswear brands and stuff like that. And my job just changed almost overnight. It became like, right, these are your targets. If you don't hit them, you've got like 3 attempts, 3 months. If you don't get there at the end, out.
Yeah.
And I've always been, when it comes to sales and stuff like that, there's that old school mentality of being a sales rep where people think you're there just to sort of rip them off. And I've really always tried to carry myself the absolute opposite of that. I'm just here to support you. I work for this brand, but I'm just here to help. I'm just here to help you make money. That's my job. I'm not there to rip people off, but there is that old school mentality, especially with some of the older businesses, of like, well, come on, let's scratch the order pad. Let's, and you used to hear horror stories of certain people doubling people's orders to make a bit more commission. And there was like just all these sort of people that had been in the industry for years that had the worst reputations. People hated them. And I always wanted to just be that guy that people don't mind coming into the shop, and you have a good laugh with them, and you're supportive, and you do what you can to help them make the best out of their business. And that's always how I sort of carried myself. But then when the business, the One Industries company, when that went through this ownership change, I felt it changed me as well, because I was like, well, now I need to be a bit more pushy. Now I need to, you'd be chasing numbers, right? Or there'd be I started spreadsheet chasing. And it was like sales meetings and sales reports. And, we had this little task which we had to do where, every call that I did, every visit, you had to fill out a form after, what did you talk about? What was the outcome? What are the opportunities? And I was like, this is not me. Yeah. My personality is, I'm good. I can do that. Don't get me wrong. But like, my personality is just to hang out with you and chat shit. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but that's, people buy off people. Yeah. And people hate when people come in and start telling them that they're doing things wrong and that they need to up the next order and drive. And I was over it, man. It was just, all the fun went out of it. It wasn't about building the brand anymore or anything like that. It was just about keeping your job. And there was, other reps within the business that, you were almost competing with them. And I hate that stuff, man. Like, I really hate it. I'd like to think I'm more of a team player than a go solo and just try and, make as much money as you can. Money's never really been a motivating factor for me, and it just didn't sit well. So yeah, I decided just to get out. So slowly started another business while I was still there, which, it's a little bit naughty, whatever, but it didn't really encroach on it too much. And yeah, ended up starting this motorhome campervan conversion business that just, I don't even know where to start with it, man. It's like, how long have you got? I mean, this thing was just insane what we've managed to build. And it's still going now. My cousin still runs this company now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's still going, man. The company's called AB Race Cruisers. If anyone's ever looking for a van, then feel free to hit him up. My cousin Jonathan still got that thing going. But I guess to tell you the story of this. So
yeah, man.
Yeah. Oh, man, it's nuts. So at the time, my cousin was working for a speedway rider called Ty Woofenden, who now is a multiple world champion. And there was this one occasion where one of his, jobs was he took Ty's Mercedes Sprinter to Poland to get it made into like a race cruiser. So it had like a living area and a garage in the back. And credit to him, while he was there, he figured out like everyone's coming to the same place. Like every speedway rider in the World Series, World Championships, whatever it's called, Speedway Grand Prix, every single rider went to the same person. And these things, dude, like they look super unique. They were very different to anything that you'd see in the UK. You know, I think a lot of the UK offerings were quite bland. They were a bit vanilla. You know, these things had like lights in and chrome and blah, 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 blah. So I remember him coming home and we went on holiday together and we sat on the beach and he was like, you know, I think there's something there. We could do this. Like we could buy a Sprinter van. We'll drive it to Poland. We'll get it converted and we'll come back and we'll sell it. And I was like, yeah, it's probably makes sense. Like, why not? Let's just give it a go. So we put a bit of money in each. I think we bought our first Sprinter for, let's just say £10,000, whatever. So we put a bit of money in each. We drove over there, which was a right ordeal trying to find this factory. And we just rocked up and we were like, look, we've come from England. We want this van looking as pimp as possible. And then we'll come back and fetch it and drive it home. And if we can sell it, great, we'll do it again and we'll just keep going. Yeah. So that's what happened. Like the guy in Poland converted this van. We took it back. The first one was a kind of funny because I always forget how we worked this, but basically we got wind that you could earn more money selling them in Sweden. So we listed it in Sweden and England, and somehow we got an inquiry in Sweden and this guy was like, I'll buy it. And we were like, shit, we need to get this van to Sweden. So we drove. So basically this first van, we drove from Newcastle, where we bought it from, straight to Devon. Devon, got on the ferry over the water to France, drove it to Poland, got a flight home. We then got a flight back to pick it up, drove the van all the way back from Poland to England, got an inquiry in Sweden, maybe a day or two after, drove it all the way to Sweden. The guy looked at it and was like, not interested. So we drove it all the way back to England. It didn't sell for like maybe a week or two. And then the same guy in Sweden, his friend, said he'd buy it. So then we drove it all the way back to Sweden and then finally sold the thing. Anyway, long-winded story to tell you that this business was a bit of a shit show from the start.
You guys were just drivers, right? You just kind of...
Dude, it just got insane. I mean, we were doing that drive 2 or 3 times a week from... So we basically got it set up. I'll fast forward because it's no doubt pretty boring for people listening. But we basically got it set up. So we started off selling like, let's say 1 van a month. It then escalated quite quickly to being 1 a week. And then it became 2 a week. And then it was like, okay, like what are we doing? You know, this is just getting out of control because we were basically selling most of our stuff in Sweden. Purely because, again, there was nothing like that over there. And the Swedish economy was super buoyant. It still is. It's really buoyant. You take a vehicle from Poland to Sweden and instantly it's like doubled in value. So we were buying vans in Poland. We were then converting them. We were driving to Sweden. We were getting them registered. Then we were selling them. And it sounds easy, but it's really not because there's a lot of mileage in between. There's a lot of hassle. But ultimately, you know, we created this business that was doing really well, and we were still young guys. You know, we'd rock up to sell someone, and I always use this example, right? We rocked up to this guy in Norway once. We sold most of our stuff in Sweden, Norway, and the UK, and we rocked up to this guy in Norway once who was he owned a chain of hotels, multi-millionaire Norwegian guy. And he came out of his, he had like a Bentley Continental or something. He came out of this Bentley Continental and he was super well dressed. And he had like beautiful hair and like really like dapper guy. And then there was me and my cousin dressed like this, like with hats on. And he was just like, what? And we were like, yeah, here's your van, sort of thing. You know, we were so young and we'd probably been traveling for like a week. We'd looked like shit, smelt like shit. And this guy like handed over the equivalent of like £50,000 in cash. And we just left. And it's like, dude, we did some crazy stuff with our company. Absolutely crazy stuff. But again, wouldn't change some of those experiences for the world. Like, you know, it was, insane. It really was. I mean, it was insane. But ultimately, it came to a point where I was burnt out. I mean, the travel, this constant driving triangle of England to Poland to Norway to Sweden to Finland to Denmark, there's only so much you can do that, right? And I think I got to a point in my life where I just wanted to settle down a little bit. Like, I just wanted to be at home with my friends. I wanted to ride my bike. I wanted to do this, that, and the other. And I met my girlfriend, who I'm with now. And I think a big eye opener with that, I remember saying to her, we went on, dinner. We went for dinner one night, and I said to her, I was going to Poland the next day, pick a van up and drive back. And I remember saying, I'll see you in a couple of days. I'll go pick it up, come back. We can do this, that, and the other. And I ended up getting stuck out there for like 3 weeks because it was just disorganized. We'd end up with the wrong van getting honestly, man, some of the horror stories I could tell you about it. We'd end up with vans in the wrong color. We ended up with, all sorts of stuff. There'd just be issues to sort out.
Yeah. And
no doubt Polish people are great. They are great. Polish people are amazing, but they're pretty hard to work with, to be honest. So the experience I've had with certain Polish people is, if you can't do it, let's say you said to me, sorry, right, I want my van converting, I want all inside of it black. Yeah, cool. And we take it there. There's no black material. They just do it red. And then you turn up to pick up your van to bring it to you, and you're like, why is it red? Oh, we didn't have black, so we just did it red. You're like, you can't do this. Like, now what do we do? Like, now I'm here to pick it up. And there was just so many sort of organizational errors we were going through, and lack of communication and language barriers and just so much stuff. It was too stressful. I mean, I did have a nervous breakdown at 23, I think. I just couldn't handle it anymore. I just got to a point where I used to cry uncontrollably because I just couldn't handle the stress. When your phone rings and it's a customer and it's a problem, that feeling is the worst. Or you've promised someone to have the vehicle back for them so they can go on a family holiday and it's not ready, and you've got to call up and tell them. And all right, that's just running a business, but I just couldn't handle it anymore. I just, there was just a drastic lack of communication where they wouldn't understand, and then you just end up, letting people down and making people angry. So yeah, we decided to go our own way. And that's a story for another day, I'm afraid, because we did part company, but not very amicably. Let's put it that way. It was pretty bad. It got quite nasty. And I ended up walking away with probably less than £30, I think, in the end, after having a multi-million pound business. So that was pretty, yeah, again, just put me into a bit of a weird headspace as well, to be honest. I mean, you've built this thing up and then it's gone and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's when Hook It was born, to be honest. That's when Hook It came around. It's something that, so for people listening, Hook It's a distribution company. We've gone through quite a lot of changes over the last sort of few years, but I was always a big fan of distribution. Even going back to, like I said, when I was a creepy kid, I used to study magazines. I used to call distributors to just ask for stickers. And I was always just super interested in how these companies worked and how they built brands and, marketing. I've always been really into marketing, although I didn't know what it was at the time. It turns out I was a massive fan of marketing and sort of, just distribution and working with cool brands and cool people. And I always wanted a distribution company. I remember telling my dad that when I was probably 12, like, I want to do this. I want to like bring in my own stuff. I want to have a warehouse with boxes and stock in it. And like, it seems so cool to me. So yeah, I started Hook It.
Were you getting more into mountain biking then? Or
no, not at all. This is the funny thing, right? So Hook It was meant to be a motocross distribution company. That was my plan. So going back to when it first started, it was just me, and I was talking to a friend of mine, Joe Bowman of Steel City Media, and we were going to distribute a brand called Census Grips, owned by Cam Zink. So I got in touch with Cam through email, and I said, look, I'm starting this business called Hook It, and I want to distribute Census. Hang on, let me try and think about it. Yeah, that's right. Joe had heard that Census were going to make a motocross grip. They wanted to make like a dirt bike grip. So I hit up Cam and I was like, look, I'm setting up a distribution company. I've worked in the motocross industry for many years. I'm your guy. But basically the motocross grip never happened, but they did have mountain bike grips in stock. So I ended up placing an order for mountain bike grips, and thus we became a mountain bike company. That's how it happened. I didn't set out to it at the time. I didn't even own a mountain bike. I wasn't interested in it really. I mean, I probably did. I have a bike? I don't think I had a bike at all. No, I didn't have a bike. I didn't even ride. Because I couldn't afford to. That's the dead set honest truth. I had zero money. Camzing offered to give us 30-day credit term on our first order. So I placed an order for about £1,000, knowing that once these things come, I have to sell them in 30 days to pay the invoice. And that's how it started. It's no facility, no warehouse, worked out of my mum's garage for a little bit. And then thankfully I got 2 business partners who could actually move this thing forward and not just bumble along.
Where did you guys go from like once you did the grips? What was next on?
Yeah, so the way this kind of all played out was a friend of mine, Ol Green, who is one of the partners at Hookit. He was actually living out in Whistler. He'd done the whole gap year thing, and he was living out in Whistler. And I hit him up and I said, look, I want to do this. This is my idea. I've already got a contact at Census. I've already placed an order. I'm doing a few little bits with it. And because he was out in Whistler, he was like, well, there's tons of brands out here that need a distributor. I'll see what I can find. So he then stumbled on Joystick, which at the time was like a brand new mountain bike components company. They were just making handlebars and I think it was just bars and stems at the time. Really cool little company, really cool brand. The guy who owned it, Chris Glue, was based in Whistler. So I ended up getting in touch with him. He's like, look, I'm in Whistler. I've got a business partner in the UK. We're going to set up a distribution company. Can we distribute Joystick? And he was like, yeah, crack on. It's yours. Now, this is where it got a bit weird though, because we placed the first order, which was for £6,000. And I didn't have anywhere near that amount of money. So I ended up, again, just randomly bumping into who is now my other business partner, Mark, who had a brand of his own called 35 Bikes, and he was selling brake pads and stuff like that online. Yeah. And Mark's the older one out of all of us at Hookit. He's had a few sort of, I'd say, successful businesses in his time. And I said, look, I've got this distribution company. I've got this brand. We've got this other brand which we can do. It's going to cost this much money to get it into the UK. And he was kind enough to sort of, I guess, do the whole Dragon's Den thing and be like, well, I'll come in, but I want a percentage. And that's what he did. So he joined the business as well. And it's been us 3 ever since. And nice. Although it's weird because I didn't really know Mark at all when we first started. I bumped into him on a ride one time and a few of my friends knew him. But we do work really well together. I think there's a lot of value in there being 3 very different personalities within a company, although sometimes it can be kind of stressful. And we do definitely have differences of opinion. It does work because we're all doing it from a different angle. We all want, I wouldn't say different things out of it, but it does seem to work. Although I'd go as far as say,
would you guys have like different skill sets then, right? It wouldn't.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like I'm like the visionary guy, the marketing guy. I'm a bit more sort of less make a plan, just do it sort of person. Ollie's very good at, he did a business course. He's very good at spreadsheets and stuff. Like, I can't even work Excel, dude. Like, you might as well forget about it. He's really good at spreadsheets, sort of that sort of thing. Very good at running numbers, very good at figuring out what things cost, importing, stuff like that. Yeah. And then Mark, he had a distribution company before selling bathrooms. And he's really good, again, with like finance and running our business, which isn't my strong point at all. And I think it's provided quite a lot of growth over the years because you do learn to sort of get out of your own way a little bit, but also like hand over tasks that you're not good at. I think when you start this stuff as an entrepreneur, you want to do anything and everything, right? But you realize that actually someone else is better at this, and just let them do it. I think reading the 4-Hour Workweek was a big one for me. Learning how Tim Ferriss runs his companies, which is off-sell. Sort of like palm off basically pretty much everything. Outsource. So outsource almost everything. And, we've done a little bit of that over the time, but also outsourcing to your own business partners and just being like, this isn't my strong point. I'm good at coming up with ideas and stuff, but you are good at actually executing. So here you go. And it's worked out really well. And I think we've been around for 7 years. I think now we're about 7 years in. And don't get me wrong, it's been hard. There's been some bloody hard times with it. Especially when, we pretty much bootstrapped the whole thing. We've never had a loan or anything like that, really, other than sort of from ourselves.
Okay.
So it has been hard, and especially when you're up against big distribution companies that, are probably a lot more cash rich than what we are. But and that's led, been truthful in the past to us sort of losing brands because we literally just didn't have the resources and the money to keep fueling the growth. And it's basically meant that we've gone through quite a lot of changes over the last couple of years, whereas now we actually don't really distribute anything. Everything that we sell, we make. Okay. So sort of, and that's been a bit of a change as well, going from building other people's brands to actually just building our own brands. We've been burnt a few times by, we've worked with a company for, let's say, 3 or 4 years. You've built up this brand and it's in 50, 60 shops around the UK. And then they're like, we've had a better offer. This other distribution company is going to spend 100 grand with us, whereas you guys only spend 10 per month. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever. And you just sort of get almost gazumped out of brands. The contracts aren't worth the paper they're written on. Yeah. And it's a bit of a harsh reality for anyone starting a small distribution company that if anything's successful, I guess with anything in business, someone with more money is going to come along and take it off you. And we've been victim of that 4 times, I'd say. So, you get a brand to a point and you're like, oh, this is going really good. And then it goes. And I think all 3 of us just got really sick of it. And we were like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, why are we doing this for other people? We've proved we can build brands, but what we couldn't do was just take them to that next bit, which is companies that have got multiple reps on the road, that have got buying power, that have got the ability to sit on tons of stock and not worry about it selling the same month or whatever. So yeah, it's been a journey, dude. I'll be honest, it's been a journey. It's been God.
With the podcast, what was the idea behind that? Because that was sort of you're like 5. It's been 5 years or something, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been like 5 years, man. And I guess in reality, it all goes back to having no money and trying to market a company.
Yeah.
So I always tell this kind of crazy story that I basically came up with 2 ways to market Hook It when I we've been going for like a year and a half. I was like, right, we need people to know about this company, Hook It. Like, we need people to know about it. Like, what can I do? So I came up with 2 ideas. The first one was to break the world record for the longest mountain bike jump. And honestly, I went down this huge rabbit hole of getting a bike sponsor, stunt coordinator, location. Everything was pretty much ready to go, other than having the money to fund it. Like, that was the hurdle to get over, was like, if you want someone to come and actually verify your world record, it's going to cost 10 grand. And I was like, well, we don't have that. So where
were you going to do it? Was that like in the UK or?
Yeah, the UK. Yeah, man. Like, I've got it's a relatively well connected. So I've got a friend who's got like a motocross track in Doncaster called Fat Cats. Had a guy who works there who drives the machinery. He was like, yeah, I can build you any takeoff, any landing you want. Again, bike sponsor was sorted out. Like, dude, everything was ready to go. The only thing I think I never really considered was the fact that you had to break the world record. I was more like tunnel vision of like, the exposure this will get will make up for whatever happens.
Just like everyone's going to see this. It's going to go.
Yeah,
viral.
Exactly. So the exposure was like the goal. Never really considered, can you actually jump a bike this far? Have I ever done anything like it before? Not really. Sort of thing. Is looking back, man, it was like the stupidest idea. But I went down this pretty big rabbit hole when we were talking about it the other day, again on the lockdown companion that I do. And, there's that idea niggling in the back of my head. Like, it would make pretty cool content, to be fair. Like, it would be kind of funny to give this thing a go, because it's not, I got burnt for this when I said it last time, but it's not that far. It's like 130 feet. Like, it's big, but it's not.
It's
you said you had Robbie Madison on the show the other day, right? If you look at some of the stuff he's done, unattainable. A long jump on a bike seems to me like maybe, I feel like with the right setup and the right equipment, not unattainable. Anyway, I'm not setting myself up for failure and doing it.
If you got some plans, are you kind of like thinking about it?
No, but there's definitely been a few emails shot around about it.
If the lockdown continues, man, you'd be like, all right.
Yeah, I'm going for it. So yeah, that was one option, and the other option was to start a podcast. I mean, the podcast thing was a huge motivator for me to get out of the campervan company and start Hook It was podcasts. You know, I used to do these huge drives. I really got into listening to audiobooks because, you know, I'd be sat there for 12, 13, 14 hours at a time driving around. And then I somehow managed to stumble on podcasts, and especially a Joe Rogan podcast. I remember this one particular episode, and I've never been able to find it since. I don't know if I imagined it, but it was with him and Duncan Trussell. And I remember driving through Sweden, and I was really homesick. I was probably really depressed looking back, although I didn't know it at the time because I didn't understand what it was. I was really depressed. Yeah, I was really depressed. I'll have been in a bit of a hole. And listening to this podcast talking about basically not doing stuff that you don't enjoy doing. You know, you're literally here for one life, and you've got to try and make the most out of it.
Yeah.
And it was weird because it all really sunk in, and that was a huge motivator for me to go, you know what? I hate this and I don't want to do it anymore, regardless of what money's involved, regardless of family feuds, whatever it's going to take. I need to be out of this like fast. So I was still listening to podcasts loads. You know, again, I started going on the road more, and I was like, well, there's not really a mountain bike podcast. There's literally, in fact, not that there's not really one. There isn't a mountain bike podcast. So I just came up with this idea to start a podcast, hence why it's still called the Hook It Podcast, because I never expected it to do anything. I thought it'd just be me probably bumbling along, like talking to some friends. But it, dude, you just sort of like, I wouldn't say it blew up. Not, you know, I think that'd be not accurate. It took many years before it got any sort of value and listener based. But now it is where it is, and I'm super proud of where it's at. It's been a lot of work, and it's been a lot of hours, it's been a lot of time, but I'm so proud of not just the podcast, but the listener base that's involved in it. Like, I've met some amazing people that are the best friends I could ever wish for. And I don't mean just guests, I mean listeners that I talk to, that I meet, that I go riding with, that, you know. So that's kind of how the podcast started. It was like, right, there's not a mountain bike podcast. How hard can it be? Download some recording software at the time. Used to use Skype. You know, that seemed to be the way to do it. Started off just with friends. Again, I'd like to, you know, without blowing my own trumpet, I was relatively well connected, so I got some pretty good guests like straight away. And it just went from there. And I don't know how many episodes we are in now, but it's quite a lot. I think it's probably way over a couple of hundred for sure when you factor in all the little mini series and stuff that we've done.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the podcast started. Yeah, it was a way to market the business. It was a way to, but what's quite interesting is I never wanted to actually make it like a salesy thing. I don't think ever really even talked about Hook It on it. It's like, I want people to just join those dots naturally.
Yeah.
I still get messages all the time. Like, I didn't even know it was a business. I thought it was just a podcast. It's like, nah, there is a business behind it, but I think
otherwise it could sound like a bit, I don't know if it's sort of weird or pushy or whatever.
Yeah, and I never wanted that. Again, it's going back to how I am as a person. I think like I'm not that sort of guy. I don't want to push stuff on people. You know, if people join those dots and go, oh, actually, I'll buy something off them and support them, great. But also going back to sort of the first few years of the podcast, we only, as a company, as Hook It, we only sold to trade customers.
Yeah.
So people couldn't really support us anyway, unless they went into the local bike shop and blah, 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 blah. It's a little bit different now. You know, we're set up a little bit more e-commerce, but yeah, that's kind of why it started, dude. It's why it started, and it's taken on a life of its own. Like I said, people oftentimes don't even know that there is a business that's connected to it at all. It does its own little thing. It's its own little community. It's its own little thing. So, and it's kind of weird, kind of keeping it separate sometimes, because I do like that it's a little bit separate. Like I say, I don't want it to be like driving sales all the time. It's not what it's about. That's not what podcasts are about for me anyway.
If it's fun, you know, and you're kind of having, if you're still enjoying it, that's kind of, that's the thing. I
feel like I've waffled on. Even my throat's sore, man, which is rare. I don't really talk that often on my own show. In
the spotlight.
Yeah, I know.
And you're doing like some like different series as well now, right? So like
Yeah.
How's
So
that been going?
Yeah, it's been so fun. There's been a few little mini series that I've started throughout the podcast. So the first one that we did was called EWS or Bust. And I remember we got this email, as a typical distributor does. We got this email off a guy saying, "Oh, can you sponsor me? Can you do this?" And there was something about this email. I mean, we get a lot of those. You get a hell of a lot of sponsorship requests, but there's something about this particular email from this guy called Rich Payne, and I was like, there's something here that is different. But basically, he was asking for money. He was asking for financial help to go race the Enduro World Series. So I got on a call with him and I was like, look, man, can't offer you money. Like, we literally just don't have it. But what we can do is I can offer you a platform to promote yourself. How about we do a podcast series and we'll literally follow you around the world. We call it EWS or Bust. We came up with this whole plan of every time he's done a race on the Enduro World Series, we'd catch up the day after and we'd talk about the travel there. We'd talk about all of the stuff it takes to be a privateer and go racing. And it was really unique. I'd never really seen anything like that before. Yeah, so that was the first series that we did, and that did really well. I think it helped Rich get a job in the industry as well. He's now one of the GMBN presenters. And he did say when he got that gig, he was like, they loved what we've done with EWS or Bus. So I was like super proud, and and it was so much fun, doing that, catching up with him. It helped him get sponsors. Obviously you can use that to your marketing, to your brand pitch. Even when when you're applying for sponsorship, go to a sponsor and say, look, all right, I'm not winning, but I have a podcast platform which is getting 50, 60,000 downloads per 3 months or whatever. All of a sudden that's quite valuable to brands. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like that was almost the first time podcasting became, I wouldn't say like a valid platform, but brands were starting to go, actually, how many people are you reaching? Like, how many people are listening to this sort of thing? So it did help him, it got him brand deals. It got him, some help and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. And then I started doing a series called Behind the Bike. And again, full honesty, the reason I started doing Behind the Bike was because I couldn't afford to buy a bike. So, I mean, this is going back a few years, obviously now, but like, I really wanted to start riding again. But most people will know, if you listen to this, like, mountain bikes are expensive. And I was trying to start, the business was still only just getting going, and money, I was saving for a house, spending a lot of money being out on the road. And I was like, right, how can I negotiate a bike? Well, we just give the brand a platform. So I came up with this concept called Behind the Bike. And the idea with that was that bike brands would send me a bike. I'd ride it for a month. And then I'd talk to the brand about the bike, about like, not necessarily about, because I'm not overly technical when it comes to riding. I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not really into bike tech or like parts or anything like that. I'm really not that bothered. But I was more interested in the stories of the people that helped make that bike come to market. So we had engineers on, we had marketing people, and the brands all absolutely loved it. It went really well. And it got me to ride bikes for free. So that was pretty sick. So that's why we did that. And then the most recent one, and arguably by far the most successful thing that I've ever done in anything, is the Lockdown Companion, which is where, I think the backstory of that is when we went into lockdown volume 1, I hit up my friend Ollie Wilkins, who's a professional mountain bike rider, and said, look, people are bored. They're going to be stuck at home. We need to entertain them. We need to give them something to do. We need to create a podcast which is really engaging, that people can follow along, and we're going to try and create storylines, and we're just going to have some fun with it, man. Like, let's just entertain people. Let's just make sure people aren't depressed. And that's what we did. And, we've done 40 odd episodes of that, coming up to 40 episodes, so nice. It's been a weekly show, so almost every week. Yeah. And it's arguably the most fun thing and the most successful thing I've ever done in my life. Like, from the outside looking in, you might think it's just two guys talking utter shit. But what people probably don't see, and no doubt, Ollie, it's the same with you, is the amount of messages that come through of people that have said, I'm struggling with this. I've lost my job. I am depressed. You guys talking shit helps.
Cheers people up, right?
Cheers people up, man. And it's honestly, it makes me emotional even thinking about the amount of messages that come through, and people that, yeah, have reached out and said really kind things, and it's a nice thing to have done. It's never been about anything other than having fun and putting out content that people can relate to, and that series as well has opened up so many doors. You know, I've got a really good deal now with Focus Bikes, you know, to ride for them as part of their sort of team, I guess. It's opened up sponsorship, endorsement stuff, all sorts of things, man. Like it's just been amazing. It's been so much fun. And if you're listening, which maybe you are or not, Ollie, like, thank you so much for being so open to the idea of, you know, me ringing up and going, right, weekly show, we're going to be in lockdown, we ain't doing nothing else, let's just have some fun and see what happens. And it's honestly been amazing. So and for me, man, like, that's what podcasting is. We were talking just before we went live, right?
Yeah.
That's what podcasting is to me. It's sitting down and just having a very open chat. It's not about, I hate the word interview. People always say, oh, you know, you're doing a podcast interview. I'm like, nah, I just chat to people. Like, I don't interview them at all.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not, again, I wouldn't say I'm not that sort of guy. I feel like I'm probably, after doing it for 5 years, yes, I can probably turn that stuff on and try and get information out of people and try and like get some stories out of them. But it's just having a chat with people, man. And that's ultimately what we do and what we do every week. We just sit and chat. We always say, like, it's so funny whenever we're about to record, like we did before we went live, you're chatting away, and I'm like, you got anything to talk about this week? And he's like, nah. I'm like, nah, me either, really. Let's just see what happens. And we just hit record and we just see what happens. So yeah, that's flourished, and we're looking into doing something a little bit more structured now. I think, are we in lockdown anymore? I don't know. Yeah. But we call it that.
What do you want to do next? What's kind of next on the horizon?
As far as that series or in general?
Both. So
good question. I guess as far as that series, we've both sort of said now that this needs to be a thing that we do continue doing. People seem to really resonate towards it. We do seem to get on pretty well as far as, you know, hosting a podcast together. So we're going to try and make that a bit more of a like legitimate thing again. You know, maybe have a name change, make it something that's a little bit more sort of, I don't really know what the word is, but, you know, there's certain podcast names, you know, I want to wear, this is a prime example, like Gypsy Tales. I want to wear a Gypsy Tales t-shirt. I want to wear a Rad Season t-shirt. Do I want to wear a Lockdown Companion t-shirt? No. Do I want to wear a Hook It Podcast t-shirt? No. It's not, it was never, the Hook It Podcast was never meant to be that, if that makes sense. So I never really came at it from that angle of like, how marketable is the brand? Yeah. Whereas I think what you've done, like Rad Season, the logo is really sick. People will wear that stuff. They'll be like, oh yeah. Whereas the logo that we created, I never expected it to get to this point, but it's almost gone too far now that to take it back.
Yeah.
You know, you can't, and doing a name change on a podcast is surprisingly really difficult because all of your SEO gets wiped out. It just isn't, you know, the slug that you use actually for the podcast would have to remain the same. It just doesn't work. So for me, doing the series within the podcast is the way forward, and then you create mini series off of it. So yeah, that's the goal. So we're going to get something set up hopefully pretty soon. And then, dude, I don't know what the big goal is, man. I just go with the flow these days. I've learned to get out of my own way a little bit. Opportunities come up, and you have to just roll with them.
Yeah,
I love that recently we've turned the Lockdown Companion series into an event. So we've got our own bike event, I guess, happening called Freedom Ride. So we've got that happening. And I think that's the future of it. I think that's the future of podcasting for me. It's creating more engagement and more things outside of listening to the podcast that listeners can get involved in, whether that is ride days, whether it's, you know, events, whether it's live events. I'm not too sure, but that seems to be the way that it's going. And that's what I want to do with it, to be honest with you. It's so sick getting everyone together, you know, even if they're all the listeners from the south of the UK, to go down there and like meet best part of 300 people who listen to your podcast is just,
that's mad.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's very humbling to be honest as well. It's very, I always come away, well, we did it last year, and I remember driving away just like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is crazy. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't really know what the future is. Like I said, I've gone through like quite a few changes within Hook It myself. So I do agency work as well on the side. Yeah, I work for Red Bull, SPEC, Eyewear. I work for Saks Underwear as well. So that's been a transition that we've gone through with Hook It. So I do that like outside of Hook It. So it's kind of weird, man, when you think about it, because I have like 5 jobs that are all sort of full time, and it's
wearing all these different hats.
Yeah, literally. I don't know how it all works, but it seems to. But yeah, I don't really know. What do you? I'd like to ask you, like, what do you think the future is for podcasts? Because
I don't know, man. I mean, so what happened to us was like with the TV thing with Fuel, that was pretty unexpected.
Right.
And when we started, I was like, okay, like we got to do something. We're in lockdown. Every sort of you're one of the originals, but every man and his dog was kind of like, okay, we got to do a podcast and sort of jump on it. And I was like, we had all these events on our platform that were cancelled. Let's do something. So we started it and we thought, okay, if we could do it live, why don't we'll try. I know obviously the issues with live, but Wi-Fi connection and everything else, and
I think that's what sets you apart from a lot of podcasts though, right? That's like your little USP is you just go live, and it's a lot more, would you say, industry based, a lot more action sports industry?
I think so, yeah. It sort of goes, because it goes across, it's a weird one. It's sort of like if we were just doing it live on LinkedIn, you can focus on one, you could keep it business related, or because it goes on YouTube, it goes on Facebook, it goes on Rad Season as well, so it's kind of all at the same time.
Wow.
But it's kind of like, I don't know, like whether they're all, if with the visual stuff, like that obviously can be improved, and
I think
you can sort of step that up.
For me, I look at guys, I've mentioned him, a couple of times now, but Gypsy Tales, Jace, who's doing Gypsy Tales, he's doing what I think already what podcasting is next for me. So, just before we went into lockdown, actually, I was about to sign for a studio just around the corner from my house, because I was like, the next step for my podcast is to have a nice studio where people can come and hang out. We can go for a ride, we can go for a coffee, and film it almost like a TV show, almost like a, for me, I can easily sit and watch a Joe Rogan podcast because it's visually appealing with the camera switches, with the quality. So that seems to be the next move for most podcasts, and with action sports, that seems to be, I wouldn't say it's missing, it's not, because there are people doing it. Again, Gypsy Tales is doing it. My friend Duncan Shaw's got a podcast, which is amazing. It's shot beautifully. But for me personally, that's the next thing. That's what I want to get to, that point where we've got a nice studio where it's more of I want to create more of like a guest experience. So people come to do the podcast and it's like, this is pretty cool. Like we're going to go for a ride. Nice. We're going to go out for dinner after. We're going to do whatever and create more of a experience for them. And I think that would also create some really cool content as well, because you could almost like vlog it. Oh, we've got this guy coming in. We're going to go do this. And then we're going to record the podcast. That's almost like,
and then they'd be more at ease. I mean, I've done a lot of these where, it's the first time I've met them. And it's sort of, you've got like 2 minutes. It's like, fuck, I really hope we get on.
Yeah, definitely.
You dial in, or you say something and they don't really get what you said. You're like,
100%. And I've done the same things. I always use this example of Lucas Shaw, right? So Lucas Shaw's a World Cup downhill mountain biker, but I had him on the podcast about 4 years ago. And at that point, I literally knew nothing about Lucas Shaw. I mean, I'd be open to tell him that. And I have told him that actually in person. But so I did all this research like the days before, all these notes. I used to write notes down and notes, dude. And I'd be like, right, this is how it's going to go. And I'm going to lead with this. And I remember after the first 15 minutes, I'd blown through everything I'd written down. He'd covered it. And I was just sat there like, now what? Like, what do I do? Like, and to me, that was like a big change with this whole thing, was like, right, you just have to be yourself. Like, you just have to sit and have a chat with someone. It really is that simple. And I know certain people do struggle with that because they might think they can't hold a conversation. But for me, like that was a big turning point of like, right, doesn't matter who they are, doesn't matter the name, it doesn't matter how many followers they have or whatever. You're just going to sit and have a conversation and just get out of your own way and just talk. And that's what it is to me. And if people don't like it, it's cool. Like, just don't listen. Like, listen to stuff where they're going to interview somebody, and ask leading questions and stuff like that. It's just not my style. Like, it's just, and I think finding that right is a big thing. You find your own style, you find the vibe. And like I said to you earlier, before we started recording with Ollie, that's what we found, that we can just hit record and whatever, we just talk about whatever comes up. You're just out of your own way, aren't you? You're just doing it as if you sat in a pub together.
Yeah.
And that seems to work for me. But it did take a bit of time and a lot of issues and a lot of bad episodes to get to that point where that, like, right, it is what it is. You just go with it, just go with the flow. So yeah, interesting.
Nice.
Yeah.
Dude, what any plans for the business and for Huckett sort of outside the podcast, like what you?
At the moment, man, it's just trying to keep up with demand. Like, honestly, the bike industry blew up through this global pandemic. Every man and his dog bought a mountain bike. Everyone's been outdoors. All these people that are usually sat in pubs, all these people that are usually in shopping centers, all of a sudden they're out riding bikes and going walking and stuff. And the bike industry, again, it's bittersweet. We are blessed. We are one of those industries that hasn't been affected by the pandemic. Really, the only way it's been affected is just supply. So the only actual brand that we actually import is a brake pad, our own brake pads. And lead times on that are just insane. I mean, you're talking 8 months to get a new order. So we're out of stock and stuff like that. Everything else that we do is made in Sheffield, and we're just about to roll out made in Sheffield hard parts sort of company. So that hard parts like chain rings. We're going to do jockey wheels. We're doing some really cool stuff, and it's all made in Sheffield. And for me, that's super sick because everything that we do now is made in almost everything we do is made in one city. It's all made in our hometown.
Nice.
So for Huckett, that's what we're doing. We're focusing on that. We're focusing on just getting through this crazy time and trying to support retailers where we can and just do what we can because everyone's having the same issue. It's just supply at the moment.
Yeah.
There's just try and buy a bike right now. It's pretty bloody hard. So yeah, we're just trying to keep on top of it, really, man. Just keep doing the right things.
And where do you see it all going? Like after, when things kind of settle down a bit, do you reckon there's just going to be
where is it
a
all
massive second-hand market or,
yeah, possibly. I think every industry goes through these things, whether it's, road cycling went through it after the Olympics, it goes up and then it tapers down. And I think at the moment we're just going through one of those waves. We're just riding the wave. It's come with obviously a lot of issues. I mean, I ride for a bike brand and don't even have, I have a bike, but it's not the newest one because there isn't any. Like they're all sold. It's insane. But I don't know. I don't really know where it's going, man, to be honest. I really hope that all these people that have bought bikes through a pandemic, they've been forced to have to go and, do other things than going shopping and whatever it is else that they used to do. I really hope that people stick with it. I hope that we get a bunch of new people into the sport. I think that's the only thing we can really hope for at the moment. I hope that there isn't a massive secondhand market, if I'm honest. I really do, because that means people are going to keep the bike. It means they're going to stay healthy. And if there's anything we should have learned from a global pandemic, it's that we probably need to be healthier as a global society, and not just as a nation of the UK. We need to be healthier in general, right? So all these people that have got bored, they've bought a bike, keep riding, like keep walking, going skating, whatever it is that you found through lockdown. I hope people just keep doing that. And I hope we don't have like a dip. We will, but I hope it's not as gnarly as secondhand bike market's just flooded. I really do. But yeah, I don't know where it's all going, man. And if I knew, I probably wouldn't be sat here. I'd be planning for it. I don't know.
Dude, what's the best way for people to follow what you're up to?
Man, like
about the event and.
Yeah, for sure. So at the HKT Podcast on Instagram is pretty good. I try and keep up with that as best as humanly possible. Don't have, it's weird, man. Don't have loads of followers, but all the followers that I do have on there are really engaged, and there's always loads of messages, which I try and reply to every single one. But yeah, at the HKT Podcast is probably the best way if you want to reach out to me personally. I follow that. Yeah. If you want to look at Freedom Ride, then it's at the Freedom Ride. But we just sold out tickets today, I think. But if you want to, it's sold out. I think I know one day the Saturday is definitely sold out, but I think as of recording this right now, the Sunday is pretty much sold out as well. HKT Products is at HKT Products or www.HKT HKT Products. It's not HKT. Don't think it's the HKT that's in America. HKT. It's HKT. So HKTproducts.co.uk. I think that's pretty much everywhere, to be honest. If you want to listen to the podcast, obviously podcast streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher. And I put mine up on YouTube as well with a video. I don't know if you do. You do that as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're up on YouTube if you want to look at my face for longer, which you probably don't. So it's up there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think they're the best places.
Cool. Davey, thanks so much for your time, man. It's been
Dude, my
awesome
throat sore. Holy, what did you do? How long has it been? And how, oh my word, I'm so sorry.
That's all good.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, dude.